Not everyone has the privilege of using a dedicated monitor console for their band, so if you do, you should certainly make the most of it. Let's talk about how to make sound check as smooth and efficient as possible. The first thing is preparation. You need to be ready when the band gets there. You need to have all your mics plugged in and ready to go. You also need to have your console ready. The first thing you need to do is check your inputs. Make sure that your gains are all the way down on all your channels, make sure your pads are turned off, and make sure that anything that needs phantom power has phantom power. Then, go down your console and check your EQs. Make sure they're either zeroed or set in a logical manner. Check your high pass filters. If anything needs a high pass filter, go ahead and put it on it. If you know that it's going to need it, don't wait until you hear the instrument to do that. If it doesn't need a high pass, then make sure it's turned off. If you have compressors and gates, make sure your thresholds on your compressors are all the way up so they won't be compressing until you lower your threshold. If you have gates, make sure your threshold is all the way down so that the gate will open easily. And then once you're checking the instrument, you can raise your threshold until the gate closes when it needs to. Once your inputs are all set up, you can go to your outputs. Make sure that all your mixes are labeled and ready to go. And then, I like to put every musician and their mix at unity. So, for instance, with the drums, I put all the drums in the drummer's mix at unity. For the bass player, I would put the bass in his mix at unity. For vocalist, same deal. Put their vocal in their mix at unity. Now, I put everything else in their mix at a lower level. I usually start somewhere around -15. So the drummer's mix would have all the drums at unity and everything else at -15. This makes for a great starting place so that you're not pulling in everything from zero. Now, another reason this is beneficial is because it gets everyone a good relative mix of each grouping of instruments. For instance, the drummer is going to know what a good drum mix sounds like. So if you get him a good drum mix, everyone else will have that same relative drum mix just at a lower volume. Same with the keyboard player. If he has multiple keyboards, he'll have all those keyboards in his mix at the same relative level. Everyone else will have those keyboards at the same relative level, just at a lower volume. So now you have your outputs set up and your inputs set up, and the band's ready to sound check. There are a couple ways you can do this. The way I prefer basically includes 2 rounds. The first round, you get everyone to themselves. So you go around, you get the drummer's drums in his mix, and you get him happy, and then you move on to the bass player, and you get the bass player happy with just the bass in his mix, and so on and so forth. Now, when you're doing this, you want to use the gains this first round and not the faders. So you pull up the drums, and you use the gains to get the drummer happy. If the drummer wants more snare, you would gain the snare up until he's happy. If he wants more toms, you would gain them up or down until he's happy. So by keeping the drummer's inputs at unity to the drummer, you keep a good relative mix to everyone else as well. Now, if you apply this to keyboards as well, and get the keyboard a good relative mix of keyboards using just your gains, everyone else will have a good relative mix of keyboards too. Now that you have everyone happy with their own instrument and their mix, you'll begin round 2. In round 2, you'll go around to the band and ask them what they need of all the other instruments. So this keeps things simple, so you're only having to go around the band twice, once to get them happy with their instrument, and a second time to get them happy with everything else. If this method doesn't work for you, you can try another method. Another one that I suggest is getting groups of instruments to the players at a time. So you would still get the drums to the drummer, but then, as soon as you get him happy, you would go around the band and ask them how they are with the drums. After this, you would add the bass in, and then go around the band and ask them how they are with the bass. Next, you might get all of the keyboards to the keyboard player, and then go around the band and ask them how they are with the keyboards. Then you might move to guitars. Get all the guitar players happy with their own guitars, and then go around the band and ask everyone how they are with guitars. Now, this method may work better for some people, but you should be aware that it does involve getting everyone's attention many more times. You'll find that you spend a lot of time just getting people's attention before you can even get their monitor mix right. So in my book, the fewer amount of times you have to get everyone's attention, the better. That's why I prefer the 2-round sound check method. Now, a few other tips for running monitors. You want to be as fast as possible without making mistakes. Now, it's important that you don't make mistakes, because if you make a mistake and hurt someone's ears, you'll lose the band's trust, maybe for a really long time. So be careful with this. But If you take all night doing monitors, they're going to get really frustrated and really tired really fast. Another thing to be aware of is that monitors are intended to give the musicians an accurate representation of what's going on. So if their tone's bad, you don't necessarily want to fix it in their ears. You should probably ask them if there's anything they can do to fix their tone at the source. Now, you have to do this in a gentle way and respect the musicians while you're doing it. If you have reverb or crowd mics on your monitor desk, you should be very careful with these. These can make a mix sound a lot more natural, but you can also ruin a great mix if you turn them up too loud. Always ask the musician if they would like some reverb or some crowd mics in their mix before adding it. You might get a really unpleasant reaction if you add it in the middle of a performance. If your musicians are using stereo in-ear monitors and you have the ability to pan on your console, this is usually a good idea. It really helps the musicians to be able to pick out all the different instruments in their mix. If you're using a talkback mic, make sure that this mic is only on when you're talking because it's probably washing out their mix if you leave it on all the time. If you have a lot of vocal mics on your stage, and especially quiet singers, be careful with putting these in everyone's mixes because they can really wash out the mix. They can also add a lot of cymbals if you have a live drum kit. So if someone's complaining that their mix is really washed out, maybe you should suggest that you pull all the vocals back a little bit and see how that helps. If they're complaining about too much cymbals in their mix, you can try the same thing.